Hey guys, it's Emily the Crazy Worm Lady. It is time for the Worm Factory 360 update. So, as you can see, the level has dropped down dramatically. And this is where we had that top fed, all of that food, the grapes and all sorts of stuff that they had in here. And then we decided to let it go another week. And it is looking absolutely spectacular in here. Nothing but cantaloupe skins left. The density of worms in here is insane. I could not be more thrilled with how this is looking. Looks like there's a lone carrot back here. We know those take forever, but just look. We have all worms of all different sizes. Here's like a juvenile worm. Look at him. Bigger than a newborn, but definitely still a baby. But, I mean, they've just turned this into castings so quickly. So I'm quite pleased with that. But, I mean, just everywhere. Everywhere. They're spread throughout here. And that, I think, is due to the fact that we fed pretty much all the way across the top. So the worms are well spread out. So that's very beneficial for them composting very evenly throughout the system. But it's not too compact. It's maybe a hair wet in a few spots, but definitely not like anything I'd be worried about, even remotely. But they definitely have pretty much gone through everything. I'm seeing nothing but skins left. So that's definitely an indication that these guys need to get fed up. And I do not have a whole lot of food that is defrosted, but I do have some that I haven't frozen yet that was on my counter. And I think that might be going in here today. So let me get some bedding together, see what I can get for them to eat, and we will get them fed up. Alright, so put a good loose few inches of bedding in here. Here's my mix, grit, nutrients, neem cake. Gonna be pretty generous with it. And I got some non-thawed food. It's some lime halves, onions, and celery. Not cut up, nothing. So this should be interesting because celery and onions and all, they don't break down very quickly if they're not frozen first. So I'm hoping by mixing it with a little bit of fruit that I do have here as well, that that might help get the microbes working a little bit faster. So this smells rank. So should be fun enjoying the smell for a day or two. I'm hoping I'm going to smother it out with some coffee that I have here, because it smells, onions, strong. It looks like there's a piece of ginger in here as well that was not frozen, so that very well could take root. Alright, so here's my dilemma. This soupy mix is, looks like some grapes, a banana peel or two, and a lot of coffee grounds, but it is so wet. This is not something I can put directly into the system. So, my shredder basket here, I'm going to mix some bedding, some newspaper actually into this here. Let it sit and sop up some of the moisture for a second, and I'm going to mix it with my hands. Then we'll add this on top of our feeding down there. And then we'll put a little bit more dry on top just for good measure. So let me let this sit for a second and soak up some moisture, and I'm going to mix it up and I'll show you guys adding it in. So we do have a lot more volume now, but everything is mixed in and there's no standing water in the bottom. So going to try to loosely mix this along the top because this could potentially heat up a little bit. So So I want to make sure that it's spread out and that there's extra bedding as almost a buffer to try to distribute some of the heat, because coffee in large quantities will heat up. That's why I'm using it and testing it in my outdoor overwintering experiment. But it's also a really good food for the worms, so it's got to take the good with the bad and weigh the risk reward. So this does look like I'm adding a lot, and yes, it was a lot, but remember, this is a lot of newspaper mixed in here. So it's a lot more bedding than it is food, but it's still going to be a little bit of a test, I think, for this system. But they've been surprising me lately, so I figure why not? Worst case scenario, we get a little bit of moisture down in the bottom, gets a little wet, but as you guys saw with my recent harvest of the bottom tray from the worm factory, you can let it sit out and it can dry enough that it's more usable. So I'm just not going to worry about that and just see what happens. The worms can retreat to the bottom if it gets too warm. And quite frankly, they like it muddy, so for all I know, they'll retreat down there just because it's going to get more moist. So I'm going to top this off, but I'm not going to make this video any longer, so I'm just going to top it with some dry bedding and leave these guys to it for another week. So let me know what you think. Drop your comments below. Like this video, subscribe if you'd like some more content from me, and I'll be back next week for an update, and we will see how these guys handled the large feeding. Hey everybody, it's Emily, the Crazy Worm Lady. I'm here today just to take a look at these castings that I'm drying out from my worm factory harvest. And as you can hear, it's gotten a little dry on me. When I was down at the conference, I obviously was not here to turn this and break this up. So some of these really wet balls kind of ended up hardening on me, and I'm not sure how well they'll break down now. That's the only problem with the compost. If you can't turn it frequently and it's not staying in a consistently moist environment, or an environment where the worms can continue to work it, it can get a little clumpy. So I'm actually going to just take this now and dump it into my larger storage tote that has my castings in it, and I'm going to mix it in and hopefully it'll soften up and break down in there. So I just wanted to show you what the finished product looked like. Not ideal, but honestly, this is still perfectly good compost. Compost doesn't have to be screened or, you know, a perfect consistency in order for it to be good for your garden. Still a few little worms in here, so they'll make their way into the storage tote. Alright, so I just added this in here, and I'm just going to mix it up a little bit with some of these existing castings. You can still see I got worms in here, despite the fact that I continuously have been trying to harvest some worms out of here. There are still some, although I might take some more volunteers here soon. But all in all, these castings, even though some of them from the worm factory are a little bit chunky, I think they'll get worked through. And I mean, all in all, these castings are beautiful, so no complaints.